I have interviewed tons of developers in my career, from global MNCs to startup. And let me tell you that writing code is not the hardest part of cracking any JavaScript based interviews. Rather, it's how you think, how you explain, and how you behave in your actual interviews. That's what matters as well. If you are preparing for your JavaScript interviews and you want to crack it, not just survive it, please stick around. I'm going to tell you what most candidates miss and how you can stand out. Hey, this is Tapas. Welcome back to the 40 days of JavaScript. And today we are proudly at the 39th day where we're talking about interviews, preparing for your JavaScript interviews or JavaScript based any stack interviews. I have spent over 20 years building software, building people. In that, around 15 years, I have spent interviews in MNCs. I led the recruitment over there. And now I have my own startup called CreoWiz, where we build modern web products, we give modern software services, and I need developers to get those things done. That's the reason I also recruit. And I'm going to share what, as an interviewer, what, as a person who is sitting on the other side of the table, think and expect from you who is coming to give you interviews. This is an honest video. This is a real video and it's based on what I actually look for in developers. What will you do today? What's our goal? Our goal today is to build confidence in you in solving JavaScript interview questions and what you need. I mean, what exactly having confidence about JavaScript mean? We're going to discuss that. We're going to learn how to communicate your thought process clearly. We'll take certain use cases, examples that I have came across. We'll also understand the core concepts deeply, just not the surface level and what does it mean. And then how to get ready for your machine coding rounds or your hands-on rounds, what are the things to keep in mind. And we'll also take few examples of bad versus good over there and how developing debugging techniques, optimization, refactoring skills helps you. And beyond that, I'm also going to talk about certain hidden skills that you already have, you may not know, or those are hidden somewhere, you just need to push them out. So if you are someone who is looking for the preparation for your upcoming interviews, I think this is a video that is going to help you. And after that, you can practice the things that I'm going to talk about, do the things that I'm going to talk about. And if you have come across all the videos, all the sessions, or most of the sessions that are there in the 40 days of JavaScript, I think you have a very solid ground and foundation to face any JavaScript interviews in the world. To get started, let me start with my top suggestions. The first suggestion I want to share with you is mastering the core, irrespective of the experience that you have, whether you are someone like 2 years experience, 5 years experience, 10 years experience, you need to master the core or the fundamentals of the programming language. In this case, it is JavaScript. Yes. So in this JavaScript programming language, you have to master the fundamentals. This might sound like a broken record, if you are following 40 days of JavaScript. So what exactly it means mastering the code? Learn very well what is scope, what is closure, what is hoisting. These core concepts builds a lot of stuff for you that you will realize much easy once you take those things going forward. Again, if you're following this session 40 days of JavaScript, I'm sure it happened to you. When you are in the session of understanding this and you have a very good foundational knowledge of functions, scope, and closure, this becomes automatically so easy for you. Isn't it the case? Similarly, learn about this, learn about implicit binding, explicit binding using call, apply, bind, all these concepts. Then come some of the hard factors like promises, async, await, event loops. How beautifully we have covered the event loop, promises, and async await in the 40 days of JavaScript. I'm sure that you have gained a lot of knowledge around it because it reflects in the comments on those videos. Then comes the arrays and the object methods. You really cannot avoid them because they contribute heavily in terms of data structure. Then, of course, the concepts of prototypes, classes, inheritance are immensely useful for you to understand. And then there are few advanced concepts like garbage collection, memory leaks is going to help you out a lot in your interviews, because in interviews it is not just about knowing like how much good you are in remembering syntax. That's a very tiny part of it. Even if you don't know, it's perfectly fine. But what you need to know, like how much you know these concepts fundamentally. And if you have come across this 40 days of JavaScript so far, you know that how much related each of these concepts are, right? If you have never taken any of the sessions of 40 days of JavaScript, that's perfectly fine. I don't mind where are you learning from, but make sure that you know to connect the dot of each of this topic. That's when you don't have to fight so hard to remember the fundamental concepts. Just like remembering any stories, right? Any fairy tales, you will remember each of those concepts. Next, explain your thought process. If something comes very strong after fundamentals in an interview, it's about how well you can explain your thought process. Interviews are not just about correct answers, but it is mostly about how you think of a problem. Say, I will walk you through my plan before coding. So, if something is given to you and told, hey, can you code and solve this problem? This is how you should tell. Let me walk you through my plan before I start coding. That shows how are you putting forward your thought process in front of your interviewers. That's the point of making impression. Be ready to explain the trade-offs. Be ready to explain the edge cases. Be ready to explain the time and space complexities. All these things without being asked about it. Telling proactively that, hey, let me explain my approach first makes a lot of sense than start coding directly. Let's say as an interviewer, I ask, return the first non-repeating character in a string. Okay, the problem statement is return the first non-repeating character in a string. Now, if the candidate says, hey, let me explain my approach first after the initial thinking, I think this problem can be solved as a two-pass problem. In the first pass, I will go through the string and count how many times each character appears in the string. I can use a JavaScript object or a map for that. Then in the second pass, I will go through the string again in order to return the first character that has the count 1, because that is the one which is not repeating, correct? This approach ensures I maintain the order and can still check the frequency quite easily. This is my approach to solve this problem. While doing that, I will also take care of certain edge cases, like if an empty string is passed to the function, I will not process my logic, I will return null. If no characters are unique, in that case also I'll return null. Some of the trade-offs that I can think of, the time complexity will be O of n, because we scan the string twice. The space complexity will be again O of n for storing the character counts. I know that in the 40 days of JavaScript, I have not considered, captured, or spoken about time complexity, space complexity, etc., because that comes mostly with your DSA classes. But apart from that, I have spoken about the edge cases, exception handling, the null handling, empty string handling, logic building, problem solving, everything, correct? So if you have completed the sessions, you know already how to think about some problems like this. Now coming back to the guy who is in the interview session, now what is good over here? Whatever this person has told, the approach, this is gold, this is pure gold in interviews. Even before writing a single line of code, the person have showed, the developer has shown the planning that the developer wants to go through, the data structure they want to use, object map, he spoke about it, what kind of trade-off this taking because of this approach, and also considering the edge cases. That's the win. That's what I'm talking about. Explaining your thought process well before you start writing coding, and then tell, okay, how can I walk you through my plan before I start coding, makes a lot of sense here. All right, let's go through my next suggestion. My next suggestion is about thinking in steps but not in code. When you want to give an answer of a question in an interviews, the good answers come from breaking down things. Ask yourself after getting a problem statement. In this problem statement, what do I know? What do I have to solve? And what are those possible pitfalls? These are the things you have to ask yourself whenever an interviewer is giving you something to solve in an interview. How can you break it into clear steps? Let's talk about the same problem we have taken before, like the string where you have the non-repeating characters. So what do you know in that case? You are dealing with a string. You have a possibility that someone might pass an empty string. So you have to validate some way that the input that someone is passing, whether it's a string or there is something which is like empty, undefined, or null. You have to validate, right? So what you know, it has to be a string. As you know, it has to be a string. These are the edge cases you have to consider. Now, what do you need to solve? You have to find the occurrences. That means you have to count and you have to keep the count somewhere. So if you have to keep the count somewhere, you need certain data structure. What are the well-known data structure that you have seen in JavaScript? The default data structures: objects, arrays, maps, set, weak map, weak set. With objects and arrays, you can make much more complex data structure. But for this kind of problem, a simple data structure like object and map sufficient. So create a map or an object to store the character sequence is the next thing that you need to solve. Then you have to loop through the string once to fill the map or the object, and loop through the same string again to find the first character whose count is 1, and then you have to return that particular character. This is what you need to solve. And the possible pitfalls are, we discussed already, if somebody passing a number instead of a string, or passing a null, passing an undefined, how are you going to handle that? So for any problem statement, please consider this: what do I know, what do I need to solve, what are possible pitfalls that I need to take care of. Next, practice debugging and refactoring. This is something which is very implicit in an interview. In a sense, no interviewers would probably ask you direct question about refactoring, won't ask you direct question about debugging that much deep, because most of the interviews happen at the logic level, problem solving level, machine coding level, your fundamentals level. But what you will realize, or you would have already realized in your interviews, is like debugging and the refactoring become an implicit part of it. Those comes automatically, correct? So when you are explaining your solutions to someone, you also explain how you spot an error in case there is an error. How can you fix something without breaking? How can you improve performance of your code and the readability of your code? Sometime in an interviews, it might happen. I do it in my interviews. Give a buggy code or a poorly written code and ask the candidate, hey, can you spot the error? Can you fix it without breaking the code? Can you make this code much more readable? So there could be problems like that would be asked in the interview. So be ready for it. Be ready to read someone else's code and try to improve it in the way that you think would be better, right? Try to validate it whether your thought process is really right. Even if it is not asked in an interviews, in that case, make sure that you start talking about some of these things, right? How can you improve this code further? Okay, this is my first draft of the code. Within the time limit, I came up with this much. Now, given the more time to think about it, I think I'll be going to improve this performance of the code. I'll be improve the readability of the code. Talk about this. Interviewers love these discussions. This is not a weakness to bring out, because you yourself finding out what can be improved in your code, and the interview time is so limited that every interviewer knows that given this time, if this person can do these wonders, can think about it, this is the candidate I need in my team, because this person will always think about improving and taking the code and the product to the next level, right? So always do that. I hope you like the suggestions and you will follow them as much as possible. After talking about the suggestions, let me talk about my expectations from different experience levels. Let's start by talking about the freshers or juniors who are between 0 to 2 years of experience. As an interviewer, what do I expect from them when they come for JavaScript interviews or JavaScript based stack interviews? I always check whether they know the JavaScript fundamentals, at least the starting fundamentals like loops. They have the knowledge of functions, they know the array computations, they have basic knowledge of DOM manipulations. Now, today's world, no one really use the raw JavaScript, means plain JavaScript. They always use a JavaScript based framework like Senexjs or a library like React or framework like Views and all these things. I want to know whether they have the thought process that how these things works under the hood. If I'm asking a question to someone about virtual DOM, I would expect the person to have some familiarity with DOM. As we learned that DOM is not part of JavaScript, is very independent. So what are the things that the person know about the DOM? Does he or she aware what is the difference between inner text and the text content? When to use what? Those kind of things. Then, after fundamentals, what I look for from a fresher or junior is, can the person break down a problem? I give a problem, same problem that we have discussed about the character sequence and finding out the non repetitive characters. How are you going to break down this problem? I don't want you to start coding. Rather, I want you to write something on your paper or pen or on your notepad or on the board, or at least to talk to me like, how are you thinking about breaking down the problem? Please be very open about what you are thinking in your interview room. That's the first step towards cracking the interview. If you're always thinking in your mind and it is just growing inside your brain, it will create acidity, my folks. Don't do that. The better approach would be, start discussing with your interviewer. You will see the things will become a lot easy. There are a lot of interviewers, including myself, would love that discussion. Even there are some hints comes out, while you start doing that discussion, that's going to go in your favor. Then the next thing that I'll be looking for is the curiosity and the willingness to learn something, and that goes beyond the experience. Basically, the curiosity and the willingness is something that I always admire. I probably will take a person who doesn't have much experience with Next.js, just have installed it, just have done some kind of static routing, dynamic routing a little bit, don't know anything beyond it, but have lot of curiosity in knowing how caching works in general, what kind of problem Next.js solves in terms of caching. Having some amount of curiosity and the knowledge out of the curiosity, I will take that person. Even if the person I've never worked with Next.js caching, I know this is the guy is going to figure it out and work it out like a champ. Let's move to the next level. Let's talk about the mid level. These are the people between 2 to 5 years. And we talk about the mid level, the first thing that come in my mind is the independence. Here independence is the key. I expect you to handle asynchronous logic, debugging, using browser APIs, managing state independently. I want you to know all this fact under the hood so that whenever you are utilizing a library or framework, you know what exactly happening at the background. You know how to debug your async code. If you're using browser APIs, you know what exactly happening with set timeout, set interval, or any APIs that you bring in. If you are a mid-level developer, I expect you not to crowd my UI with so many state. Rather, manage the state in a way that the UI code looks very clean, it looks very manageable, it looks like a poem, as they say, right? And the next thing that I would expect is that you start mentoring others in the team, because now you are the mid level. So you bring your juniors up by talking to them that what is a good practice, what is a good way of approaching the problem, because the freshers, the newcomers are blank slate. If they're doing something wrong, you know who is responsible? It is you, the mid-level developers. It is you, the senior developers, who are responsible, because you are scratching something wrong on those clean slates. Those are clean slates. Mentor them wisely, because that's going to bring down the burden on you tomorrow, because they are going to take the load from you. They are going to do a lot of miracles that you don't have to really think about, and you can do other things to reach the other height, right? That's how it goes. So please focus on doing proactive mentoring. Your manager don't have to tell about this, your supervisor don't have to talk about this. It is you who takes up this and make sure that it happens. And then the next thing that I would expect from you is participating in code reviews. Lot of code reviews. This is a time when you will be looking into the code reviews of your juniors, seniors, peers, everywhere. Of course, I should do a separate video on how to do a better code reviews without abusing each other. That's something that you need to really pick up in the mid level. All right, so after mid level, let us focus on senior developers, 5 to 9 years. Now, when you are in 5 to 9 years bracket, the expectation from you is not to repeat same thing again and again. You take help of design patterns, architecture, performance, modularization. People talk to you, they get a vibe that you are the no nonsense guy or a girl who is really thinking about reusability, thinking about the holistic architecture, knows how each of the components are interacting with each other, knows where I keep certain weight and the entire performance of the application will collapse. Think about modularization so that those things doesn't happen, right? And then you are someone who takes code ownership, who thinks about consistencies, who thinks about team collaborations, etc. And of course, you go beyond the project. You are someone who can think about integrating two solutions together. When I was to work in MNC, we often had the case like the product that I am working on, we have to integrate that product with another product that 500 other users are working on without breaking the current flow of the users using both the products. Now, as an architect, you have to think, as a senior developers, you have to think, how can you do this with this backward compatibility in mind so that things will work seamlessly? At the same time, the new thing that you will introduce on each of this product or at the integration level will still work seamlessly. And believe me, if you are applying for such interviews, the expectation from you also will be to have this clarity of thought when you are talking to an interviewer of such problems. Then the last one is about the tech leads, architects, 10 plus years, those god. That's where I feel what is important is vision over your syntax. Can you architect systems? Can you manage legacy systems? Can you evaluate the trade-offs of technologies? Can you think about what kind of take you need to get so that the budget of the product is never going to go for toss? Can you inspire others? This is what I expect from you. If you are in that league, I think it's great. It's a great handshake for both of us. How do you stay relevant in the changing take? In last 2 to 3 years, the wave of AI, the way that people are looking into the developers, everything has changed. So how much you have changed your perspective for that? You cannot be a dinosaur, right? If you're a dinosaur, your product will be a dinosaur and it will be a fossil. So you cannot afford to go there. So how do you stay relevant with the changing take? And then you take up mentoring and coaching, another very important aspects, because if you're an architect, you are not only thinking about technicality aspects of your product, you also think people, because you are looking into each of the layers below you and identifying what are these mentoring aspects or the coaching aspects required for each individual below your grade, so that they can come up and they can fill the shoes which require to be filled for a better product development team. From those role expectations, now you are aware, like we have a job description that is given to you. Based on that, you have prepared your resume or the CV. You have sent that CV to me. I have looked into it, and then I have called you for the interviews. And you know, like for your experience, what is the role that I'm looking for? Then you know how to map your hiring with the position that I have in my hand, whether I'm hiring you for a mid level engineer, junior engineer, senior engineer, or architect. Now you know what exactly I am expecting from you if I am hiring you and if you're coming on board. Here I told many times you can replace that I with any company. So when you are going for an interview for a specific career level, make sure you have those expectation in your brain and mind and prepare yourself accordingly. You might be already playing with that in some organization. If you're an experienced professional for the next role or the similar kind of role, you know what needs to be done because we have discussed that. For freshers also, you know now like what kind of thing that a company have an expectation from you, so that you can better prepare for it before you go for an interview. So now I want to talk about some of the example problems. Now there are probably lakhs, millions of problems that I can talk about, JavaScript problems that I can talk about, that I ask to each of the career level. But let me take few examples and let me also tell like where else you can find more examples. So let's get started with some of the fundamentals problem. What are those fundamentals problem? For example, write a function that returns true if a string is a palindrome. So it's a palindrome checker, right? Very simple one, very fundamental problem where you need to work with the strings to figure out whether a particular string is a palindrome or not. And then next could be, how can you flatten a nested array without using any of the existing method? Is there something that you can do? So here the checkpoint is basically whether you know recursion, right? And how you apply recursion in programming. How can you do that to solve this use case, solve this problem of flattening an array? Then we can ask you about use case using debounce or a debounce function call, right? So these are some of the problems which are at the very fundamental level. Now, if you want to go from fundamental to intermediate level, the problem statement might change a little bit. For example, here we might want to ask you to implement a custom bind method or a throttle. Bind, you know, right? For explicit binding, you use the bind, right? Call apply bind. What if we ask you to implement your own bind or do an implementation of the throttle function or convert callback based function to a promise based implementation? You have seen that in 40 days of JavaScript, right? All these things already. We have done it in the sessions. Then what if I ask you to create a deep clone function? You know, a clone function such that it handles date, it handles regular expressions, it handles circular references. You know about circular references from the garbage collection video. It handles all these things. How can you write such functions, right? Then if we move from the intermediate to more advanced, there I will ask you to do things like, hey, can you write me a polyfill of promise.all or maybe an object.create or an event emitter? So for that, you need to know what promise.all does. And then you will be writing a polyfill, means imagine that promise.all is not available in the JavaScript programming language. Once it was not available, people used to use polyfill that time. Now it is available. But let's imagine the fact that it's not available. Can you write an implementation of it? Can you write object.creates implementation? Can you write an event emitter implementation? Right? Can you do that? Can you think about it? Then, if you're a React programmer, can you design a kind of mini use state in vanilla JS? Can you do that? So whatever use state does for managing the state in React by giving you the current state value and the handle to update the state, Can you do something similar in JavaScript? Can you do your own implementation? Or can you write something about memory optimizations in a data heavy application? Where the hint would be like using the weak map, caching, thinking about the garbage collections and all those things. So you see, like for each of the level, the type of questions or the type of discussions that you want to have in an interview changes. And this is what you need to understand that based on your experience level. Just now we discussed about the experience level, what kind of problem statement that you need to deal with. Where can you find these problems, guys? In 40 days of JavaScript, we discuss about tasks. We discuss about a lot of problems in each of the sessions. So if you have taken those sessions, you not only know about this problem, you also had an opportunity or have an opportunity to go through the task and solve some of this problem, discuss on our Discord, learn better, get ready for whatever the level that you are in. Doesn't it sound really amazing? Are we not connecting the dots of everything towards the end of 40 days of JavaScript? Yes, that's what the intention, guys. So these are just some of the examples. Just I wanted to start the discussion over here so that now you will go back, search in ChatGPT, search in Google, search in wherever to find more problems. But I want to request you to also look into the task of each of the sessions that we have given. Try to solve them by yourself. That's going to boost a lot of confidence in you for JavaScript interviews. Let us now talk about some of the common mistakes that I have observed in the interviews. Okay, don't take me wrong that I'm finding mistakes and things like that. It is not about that. It's rather to help you with certain things that I have observed. Take it with a pinch of salt if you feel that I'm talking something wrong about these mistakes. But in most of the cases, I found this as a pattern. Want to share with you in case it helps you. If you identify some of these mistakes or the patterns in you, just quietly observe it, try to correct it so that in the future interviews, these things don't come as an hindrance for you. Common mistakes. First, we spoke about it. Jumping to code without understanding the problem. Don't do that. Don't really do that. Try to understand the problem, discuss about the problem. Coding comes lot after that. Show your thought process. We discuss about that. Second mistake, not being able to explain the fundamental concepts like closures, scopes, promises, event loops, all these things. The guy knows to apply async await, but doesn't know what it does, doesn't know how it works, doesn't know how to do error handling with it, doesn't know how to debug that code. No, that's really not something acceptable. Because when time comes, it's not just about the syntax, it's also about the background story behind that. I love vibe coding. I started liking vibe coding recently because in some cases it gives me the initial structure and it makes me real faster. But what I hate about it is like it's probably making a lot of people, lot of folks paralyzed with the fact that they're not going to understand what exactly happened in the background. They might say, why should I understand? The code is working. The code will fall on face. The logic will fall on face where with the certain customer scenarios and the use cases. That's the time you need to know how things works under the hood. And this is the thing that comes as a judgment. This is the thing that comes as an what do you say, maybe an exam or a test in an interview, that how much you're aware or how much you are making yourself aware on certain fundamentals when a problem given to you. In the same company, you might find that they are giving you some editors for vibe coding, some AI tools to make yourself much more productive. And the same person who has given you the rights to those tools had asked you tons of fundamental questions in the interview. Don't be surprised. Don't get surprised with that. It is just because for that particular situation, in that circumstances, how you cope up. In that situation, you should not bring the entire house down. Don't burn it down just because you don't know anything about the fundamentals. So not being able to explain core concepts like closure, promises, scope, some of the DOM stuff is really no. Then writing working code but can't explain the logic. This is something that I have seen also in my interviews. Like they have written the code, it is working. But when the question asked, can you explain like why you have written this logic? Why you have used this loop over here? Why is not any other iterators? What exactly the reason that you use this particular data structure over here? What if I use the other data structure? What kind of problem will happen? So it's like one pattern or maybe a known pattern that someone have used over the period of time, but never thought about like what are the different other ways or the alternatives possible. Why these alternatives are important? Because not everyone's way of problem solution is same. It's not common. It's not uniform. The way you think about solving a problem may be entirely different from how I think of solving the problem. I'm not getting into like whose solution is the proficient, who is right or wrong. But if there is an alternate approach possible, how do you respond to that particular approach is what matters. You may not know that approach, it's perfectly fine, but how you respond to it. This is what is more important in the interviews, right? And then, of course, nowadays there are a lot of things copy pasting AI solutions without really knowing or realizing them. Like, so these are actually red flags, and the red flags are not about going wrong with this. The red flags is about not showing your thought process. That's what I'll come back to it again. No interviewers expect you to be 100% perfect, even perfect at all. They want you to show your thought process. That's what matters most. So, these are some of the common mistakes that I have observed, wanted to put in front of you. If you think it was helpful, let me know. Are you enjoying this video so far? Is it helpful to you? Would you like to let me know by putting a comment below or liking this video, sharing this video? Talk about your interview experiences. Let's share knowledge about it so that many more developers gain knowledge from it and they become successful in their life. Next, I want to talk about how to think logically, because in interview, especially the tech interviews, is about the logics. So I want to bring out few principles or the framework in front of you that will help you to think logically. You might have heard about this, the four-step framework. So in problem solving, there are four things that you need to keep in mind. The first thing, foremost thing, very fundamental, is understanding the problem. When a problem is given to you in the interview, the first thing is, of course, you need to understand the problem. So how do you do it? Rephrase the problem. A problem is given, read it, try to rephrase the way that you understand. Rephrasing help you to put the problem in your way and then validate it with the interviewer by asking and clarifying more questions. Think about the constraints, list them down. Like what are the conditions, what are the edge condition, what is the flow that you're understanding, everything in your way. And from there, ask the clarifying questions to your interviewer. The person will definitely give you hint, will run you through the problem statement, note them down. That is where your understanding come into the picture. So first, in the four-step framework, first thing is understand the problem. Once you have the problem in hand and the understanding with it, then break it into sub problems. Can I solve smaller part of it? Can I visualize the smaller part of a bigger problem? If there is a problem of solving a parking system, like how the cars get parked, right? How can I break that into multiple different problems? So, for example, if I'm thinking about a parking, implementing a solution, software for parking solution for a tech park, for a shopping mall, or whatever it is, right? How can I think about different aspects of it, like slots where the cars get parked or the bike gets parked, the vehicles get parked, the frequency in which the car or the vehicles can come with, what is the way that the vehicles get entry to the parking, what is the way that it get exited from the parking, what are the different levels of parking that we're thinking about, how many parkings are available in one slot, are those automatically managed, what is the algorithm for that? There could be different sub problems that come in your mind. Try to note down each of the sub problems, try to visualize them. Once you have the sub problem from the bigger problem, still don't get into the code. Think about the pseudocode. What is pseudocode? Pseudocode is not the actual code. This is where you will be realizing your flow chart, your logic statement, not the syntax, not the actual syntax of it. You will try to think, okay, this is the class that I need because I have a vehicle. I need a vehicle class. Okay, there are different type of vehicles can go inside the parking system. So I need subclasses of the vehicle. These are the different kind of persona who manages thing in the parking system. One persona who gives the ticket, one persona who collects the ticket, one persona who probably help person to do the parking, different kind of persona. So I need a base user class. From there I different kind of subclasses I need. So put those pseudo classes one by one, try to figure out the relationship between them. Don't think about the syntax yet. Once you figured out the pseudocode, once you figured out the entities, the relationship between the entities, if you are thinking in terms of object-oriented programming, for example, put each of these things down. After that only, you start coding incrementally and then start testing it. The whole approach over here is the step-by-step approach, not everything at once. And while you are incrementally coding, think about the edge cases, think about the test. You know what? In many interviews, I have seen, I think 90% of the interviews, I have seen that the candidate never proactively talk about test. They just talk about the coding. The first thing they think is that let's get down to code. That's not the way it is. Understand the problem, break into sub problems, think about your entities, pseudocode, relationship, then take one part, try to implement it, think about how are you going to test it, proactively think about test, and if you can proactively write, say, unit test or any kind of testing it, it's super, super impressive in the interview. So please keep these things in mind, and this is what I would suggest you when you want to think logically. Machine coding round is a very big phenomena in interviews, tech interviews, since last few years, right? Before that also machine coding round was existing, but it was taken differently. But now the name, the quote machine coding round is something very solid if you're going for a tech interview. What it is, it's about an interviewer giving you an environment and ask you to build a working feature or a mini application within a time frame. The time frame is usually 60 to 90 minutes. And if you're going for a JavaScript based interviews, you can expect problem statement which involves state management, APIs, error handling, maybe involving DOM, etc. So machine coding round is to see how capable you are in terms of building a working feature. The working thing is quite important over here. At the end of a machine coding round, what an interviewer would like to see that whatever you have built is working, and the next part would be how can I dive into that working piece to get to know what you have built. Here I'm going to share my experience, what I look for. Now this might change from interviewer to interviewer, in company to company, interview to interview, but I believe the crux of the things remain same, right? And if you have an experience in taking any machine coding interview or interviewing someone for the machine coding interview, I would love to know from you. So if you kindly post a comment about it, saying whatever I feel about it is right, or you have other additional observation about it, please put that. That will be really awesome. So first thing that I look for is the code structure, whether the code is written in a way that the functions are modular, there is a clear naming, there is a separation of concern, all these things are taken care, at a high level. You have split things across so that the reusability is in place. So I would look into the code structure as the first thing, right? Second thing, I would look for the problem solving, how the incremental thinking happened. We just spoke about the problem solving in interviews, right? Those are the things that I'm going to look for. Are you bringing out those aspects, those four aspects of problem solving, or three aspects of problem solving, or two aspects of problem solving? That's what I would be looking for talking to you, right? What's your problem solving approach? What's your incremental thinking? And what is your fallback plans if things are not working out? That's what I'll be looking for. Next, I'll be very interested to know about your error handling mechanism. Are you using try catch? Are you doing defensive programming? What exactly you are up to? Are you thinking about the errors proactively? Or is it like you're thinking just about putting the logic, making things work, and then you come back and start putting try and catch? Or you're not thinking about try and catch at all until unless you ran this program in front of me and it just gave you the white screen because of some certain runtime error. Are you thinking about optional chaining so that it doesn't blow your UI out because of certain things are undefined and null and you invoked a function on top of that? Are you already taking care of those things proactively? I am going to see that. Then I'm going to give you the UX feedback. For example, are you taking care of the loading spinners, error messages, all these things? So when you talk about the UX for developers, I am not expecting you to design something in the Figma. Rather, whatever you are building in this itself, there are certain things which comes as part of aesthetics. Are you taking care of those aesthetics? For example, you spoke about loading spinners, error messages, etc. And the final thing about the time management. I have given you the use case to solve. I want to see you solving that problem and giving to me. How are you prioritizing your features? How are you writing the enhancements? There might be certain things which are of low priority. Are you taking care of them later and building the core feature first? How are you doing that? These are the things that I would love to see as an interviewer in your machine coding round. Again, if you want to add to it, please comment below. I would love to know. I'm sure, like me, many others would love to know. So let's talk about a few do's and after that we'll talk about few don'ts in the machine coding round. So some of the do's, may sound familiar. Discuss the plan first. Always try to use the modern APIs from JavaScript, for example ES6 plus APIs. Try to give comments, write helper function, utility functions, keep the UI clean with minimalistic state. These are some very basic expectation. Some of the things that I want to put under don'ts would be, don't try to build everything at once. That's what I'm saying about the prioritization, and you can manage your time also because of that. Don't try to build everything. Break the problem, sub problem. We spoke about it, right? Of a problem, try to find out what are the high priority item for you to build this feature. Try to build them one by one. Okay, don't try everything. Avoid unnecessity. What does it mean? Avoid unnecessary framework usage, about unnecessary state management, about unnecessary library usage. For example, if you need one icon and you're pulling 4 5 icon libraries, I would have a red flag for that. Definitely think about that. Like, avoid unnecessity is something that must for me. And then don't ignore this test and the edge cases. If you proactively write test, if you proactively take care of edge cases, at least talk about those edge cases. If you're not implementing because of some time constraint or something, but back of your mind these edge cases should be solved, should be taken care, talking about it, this is something really really important. Please don't ignore test and the edge cases. Let us take a problem statement for the machine coding round challenge. The problem statement looks like this. Build a to-do list with add, delete, and local storage persistence. You may not get as simple as a to-do list for your machine coding, but I want to take you through with all the things that we have learned, the do's, don'ts, the philosophies and everything, like what exactly we can do to solve this. And I want to show you an implementation that I got, which I didn't like much, versus an implementation or a thought out implementation which I liked, which is much improved, right? So to get this contrasting differences, let's take to-do list, a very simplistic example. How do you think about it, right? First, understand the use case. I think the here use case is very simple, but you can still ask the question like, I'm talking about only add and delete. Do I need to support edit? Because I'm not talking about edit very explicitly over here. Is edit required at all? Then how about the UX of this particular to-do list? Is it something that you can come up with your own UX, or you're expecting some design from the interviewer to follow? So after discussing about the problem statement, settling down what exactly you're going to build, then you start structuring your code into modules. We spoke about that, right? Then you think about managing the state, manage the state very cleanly. What is the state that you require over here? What are the actions that you require over here? What are the entities that you need over here? All this thing. Then are you using the local storage correctly? Can you handle the edge cases like empty input is one of the thing, or some kind of error? Are those handling happening properly? Now let's look into one version of the to-do list implementation that I was not so impressed with. Check out this not so good implementation. So here what has happened, to-dos array is declared and there's an implementation of add to-do. There is no delete to-do implementation here. Let's focus on add to-do. And imagine there is a HTML which is having a HTML element with to do hyphen input as an ID. That's basically a text box. So from there, we are taking the value of it, and there is a to do's array. We are pushing this value to the to do's array, and then to do's array we are taking, stringifying, and then putting into the local storage. And there is again a list element in the HTML over there. Whatever the value, that value we are adding over here. This will work, this will give the output that you are expecting, but there are few things that you need to consider, and as an interviewer I will look into it. First thing, have you used any global variables here? Yeah, look like you have maintaining managing the state in a way that there is a global variable like to do's, right? Is there any inline event handler? I don't see any add click handler over here. So it looks like in my HTML, there will be a button. On that button, there will be an on click, and on click, this add to do is being called, because I don't see any add click handler over here. In our event handling session, right, in 40 days of JavaScript, we spoke about it like why inline event handling is bad in HTML, rather why we should be handling it in the JavaScript domain. So that's not maintained over here. There is no separate of concern, right? So the to-do list is being modified over here. In the same function, I'm also managing the list update. All these things seems to be together. There is no input validation. Whatever I'm getting from the value, I am putting it inside the to-dos. If there is empty value coming also, probably I'm getting that. That's not really good. I'm not checking whether to-dos that were inserted before, duplicate to-dos, all these things, there is no validation as such, right? And of course, I'm doing a direct DOM update every time a to-do is being changed. So the direct DOM manipulation mixed with the logic, all this thing is kind of together. So this is not so good implementation. Let's look into a far more good implementation. A good implementation would look like this or something close to this. First of all, it's a clean class-based structure. Here is a constructor. In the constructor, I am defining each of these properties very clearly. Not only that, you look at it how the event binding is happening. This is a proper way of event binding. We're not doing it in the HTML inline, rather the event binding is happening over here. Separate the concern of add to do and rendering the to do list. Okay, add to do like before, doing the job of getting the value from the input text box and then pushing into the to do's, but before that is also doing the validation, which was missing before. And then we are calling a save and render, separated out the concern. In save and render, save will happen to the local storage save, and there is again the render is separated out where we are rendering the list of to-dos that we are adding. So it's clean, class-based structure, proper event handling, modular, reusable, readable, and also handle some of the edge cases like empty values. So isn't it much more improved code than this code that we have seen before? So this is what I was talking about. In your machine coding interview round, you need to keep in mind these things. This is what an interviewer would be looking for you to come up proactively. And then there might be additional questions. Based on that, this code could be further refactored and improved in the interview session itself. Let's talk about some hidden powers that gives you some extra edge. For example, testing and debugging makes you stand out. I actually told about it in the beginning that in interviews, tech interviews, developers focus on coding and problem solution. But I haven't found it very often that a developer proactively talking about testing, maybe unit testing, end-to-end testing, why it is good, or integration testing kind of thing. They are not talking about different ways they debug their problem. Oh, like this I have faced in one of my project, it's a similar kind of situation. In that project I have debugged this in this way. I use the Chrome debugger tool, set the debug point over there, I did this debugging, that debugging. Talk about it, boast about it. It's good always. Then the implicit role of AI in the modern interviews, I want to take say see, I don't always ask if you use AI tools, right? But I can tell that the person uses UI tool and there is no shame about it. So you use Copilot, you use ChatGPT, you use Tab9, all are absolutely fine. Those are tools to increase your productivity. But don't copy paste the code blindly in your life because that will be shown in interview. Use it for scaffolding, prototype, learning, and then get into the fundamentals. Right? This is very important. Your hidden power is how much you know about these tools for the productivity purpose, plus how much of the fundamentals you know so that you know what these tools are producing. If you have that combination, it's a killer combination. Then the next thing is about the side projects. Your side projects, your GitHub profile, your portfolios. Have you contributed to OSS, open source software? Have you maintained a blog? Show me. I'll be super impressed with it. Talk about it proactively. You have done this in that open source project, a part of a squad. You have done so many blogging. You have written articles on places like FreeCodeCamp. Wow, it's going to impress me a lot. You have built this personal site of your own that reflects your style, skills. Excellent. Look at my GitHub README. Look at how clean I made it. I showcase my real world work, my commits, everything together. I'll tell you the truth. I have hired devs because of their GitHub activity, and I have skipped profiles that are with empty reports. So, this is what happened to me. I'm sure it would have happened to many other interviewers as well. So these are your hidden powers. Talk about testing, debugging. If you use AI, great. Use it. Know the fundamental. Talk about your side projects, open source involvement. And if you haven't started with your open source involvement, side projects, all these things, it's never so late, my friend. Please get started. There are so many dev communities around. Be on LinkedIn. Figure out what people are doing. Ask them that you want to contribute. Get inspired by people and then do these things, because these are all different hidden powers. If it comes out in your interview session in that room, that's going to be a very, very big plus points for you. Now, this alone cannot win you the race, but this is definitely put you ahead of many. Here is a very famous quote. Sometimes it's not what you know, but how you express what you know, that makes all the difference. Nobody expects you to know everything in an interview, but interviewers expects you to express what you know very well in an interviews. That's why I think confidence and communication together matters a lot. Why confidence matters? So confidence gives you clarity and it shows the interviewer that you are comfortable in that room. You don't have much of ambiguity. You can handle changes with a calm mind. That's what the confidence brings you. It's perfectly fine saying that I'm not sure, exactly sure, like what is the exact method, but I can give it a try to explain my reasoning. It might sounds good to you, right? It's fine in the cases that you don't know, but you want to give it a chance. It shows that you are confident with the things that you are dealing with and you can take up the challenges. That's what, as an interviewer, I would love to see in you. Then you just say, hey, I haven't never worked on it, I don't have any experience in this, and I can't answer this question. Instead of that, you can always put forward like you are trying. Okay, but in cases I have also seen that overconfidence comes out, and that's killer. Make sure that you have a check and balances over there, and that's purely a personal trait. I really cannot tell anyone saying that, okay, don't behave in this way, or this is like very high in attitude, please control that. That's not the thing, that should come from you. Like overconfidence is something that's going to break things, it's going to break deals, right? That's what you need to check, right? Talking too much without listening. Listening is an ability that you should have in an interview, and at times you might find out that your interviewer is not having that. Many of us lack it, but you can't help there. But at least make sure that you have it. Arguing unnecessarily, right? You're given a solution of a problem, your interviewer is not quite settled with that. The interviewer thinks that there are certain gotchas with this, there are certain flaws with it, and then you are getting into an argument. Don't argue unnecessarily, but at the same time, there is a way to put forward your points to some extent, and after that, you can leave out. Because at times, you really cannot win over a situation and win over a person. This is not what you are supposed to do that in the interview room, right? The whole point, whatever we have discussed for so many minutes so far, everything become void if you just arguing and killing your chance of getting hired in an interview. Then don't cross question your interviewer. I think that's a very bad habit I have seen. It's okay to ask for help. It is perfectly okay to get hints. It is perfectly okay to say that, is this a way that will be better? I think it's perfectly good. But I have seen circumstances where some guy say that, hey, can you please solve this in front of me? Is this something that you can solve? Okay, if you're challenging an interviewer and if it is that kind of environment, if all goes good, if the interviewer is also taking the challenge, it might work out. But not every individual is same. Some people who might know the answer, who might know that you are doing something wrong, you are on the wrong track, but still may not get involved with you in any kind of argument or challenge, because that's not the purpose of the interview. The purpose of the interview is the fitment in an environment that is working for someone, and you are the person who is coming from outside, expect you to get glued into that culture environment and start working on it, than challenging the entire system from the day one or before even the day one gets started, right? So that's why the challenging doesn't work very well in the interview room. And last but definitely not the least, please don't fake. Faking in an interview is a stupidity, my friend. Is don't fake. Every interviewer has the ability to know that you are faking. Okay? Every interviewer. Now, if you are trying to fake in your resume, you will be caught in the validation check. Today, there are AI enabled validation checker which will catch you even before your resume goes to an interviewer. Now, by chance, if pass through, it goes, you are still faking in an interview for something that you are not aware, you are not done. It's going to come out very badly. If you're able to manage fake knowledge to a great extent, I would say then it is not fake. You probably heard about it somewhere, you would have learned about it somewhere so that you can talk about it very confidently. That's fine. But something that you have not done, you're taking credit off, you are showing it off, this is really bad. So please stay away from it. So again, I want to come back to the statement, like sometimes it's not what you know, but it's always how you express what you know That makes the entire difference. Please keep it in mind. So that's all, my friends. To recap things, I would say please know your fundamentals, communicate your thoughts, structure your solutions, use tools like testing, debugging, AI, whatever matters to you. Show your passion through GitHub, blog, videos, portfolios, whatever you do. You know what? Cracking interviews is not about being perfect. It's never, ever about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's about being clear. It's about being confident. And you have got this. So, if you found this useful, join this journey 40 days of JavaScript. If you're already on it, 40 days of JavaScript, you won't believe how proud I am bringing you this 39th video. We just have one more to go where we are going to do an end-to-end project with JavaScript and many other things together. I'm thinking, still thinking like what kind of use case we'll be building. If you have any idea, please feel free to suggest. This 40 days of JavaScript was my dream, and I'm so happy that this dream is finally coming true. It is packed with daily problem solving, lot of in-depth JavaScript knowledge that I have gathered over the years with my hard work. It has real world concepts in it. It has all the kind of prep thing that will make you a solid JavaScript developer. If you don't believe, go to the comments of each of this video. You would know what each of the individuals who have taken it. Not many people have taken it yet, but whoever taken it, they have felt. I really feel great about that. So let's build, let's learn, let's grow together. See you again in my last video of 40 days of JavaScript, the day 40. And a request would be to share about 40 days of JavaScript so that more people come to know about it and help to grow this channel, tapaScript, by subscribing to it, joining as a member. And if you're already a subscriber and a member of tapaScript, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. This channel exists because of you. Take care. We'll be coming back very soon.